Today we're going to be weaving. Some materials that we can use that we have around the house might be a pencil. If you don't have yarn, I'm going to teach you in the video how to make t-shirt yarn from old t-shirts, and we can use cardboard box flaps to use for the loom. So let's grab some materials and let's get started. I've laid all my materials out. I found a cardboard box and I cut the flap off, which I'm going to turn into the loom. I do happen to have some yarn. Again, if you don't have yarn or string, you could use t-shirt material or fabric with your parents' permission. Setting those aside, we're going to begin making our loom first. So we have to make the notches in our loom. In order to do that, we're going to make the same number of notches along the top as along the bottom. I'm going to put 10 notches. You can decide what's going to fit for yours. A bigger piece of cardboard does make a bigger loom. Mine's going to be kind of a small, skinny one. Next, carefully cut all the notches so that you have the slits. We're going to grab some yarn. String would work for this step, twine, really any type of material like that. So just like we do at school, I'm going to tape the back. And I'm going to go through that first notch and go all the way straight down through the notch at the bottom that matches. Now you could wrap it around, like I've seen people do before. But the way that I teach it is we're going to go around to the next notch. So go to the neighbor notch and then stretch up around the next notch. Stretch down. And so when we do this, we're getting these loops on the back, and all of the strands of the warp are going to be across the front of the loom. Tape that piece secure, and then we can get ready to weave our materials. If you have yarn, you can measure out a wingspan, so that's stretching one hand all the way across your body to the other hand, measuring that out. And we don't need to have a needle. So I'm going to teach you a different way to do it. So you can take the yarn and we're going to just wind it around our hand to create like a little bundle. And you're going to be passing this bundle over and under. So remember the pattern: over one, under one, over one, under one. Each row should be alternating. So when I get done to this end, I just went under the end, scooch it all the way up. And now I have to go back by starting over, then under, over, then under. Following this simple pattern, making sure you alternate each row, your weaving will turn out just right. If you pull too tight, give it a little bit tug, loosen it up. When you run out of one color and you don't have enough to go back across, you can switch colors. This tail is a little bit long, so I'm going to trim it off. And at the end of the video, I'll show you how to tuck those tails in so that they don't stick out. Switch colors, following the same directions. Make sure each row alternates. If you don't have yarn, I'm going to show you how to make t-shirt yarn. So with your parents' permission, you can find an old t-shirt that you no longer use. Find the bottom edge of the t-shirt. This is what we're going to be cutting off. So you scooch it up, and using some scissors that can cut through fabric, you're going to carefully cut off a strip from the bottom. Once you get one row done, you can cut off another strip from the bottom. To make it into yarn, you just pull it tight, and then it kind of creates this like rounded tube shape, which makes it easier to weave. And weave the t-shirt material just as you would weave yarn. For the next part, I'm going to show you how to make tassels. So I'm kind of measuring about how long I want the tassels to be. And then I'm going to use that measurement to cut off a whole bunch of these longer pieces. When your pieces are cut, you're going to lay them over 2 warp strands, like a rainbow shape. You're going to take the tail of each piece of yarn going around the warp strand and then pull them down and then upwards again. So let's repeat. Make a rainbow over 2 warp strands, come around each warp strand, and then you can slide them up. When you're done with the first row, then you can do the second row and go in between. So using 2 warp strands you haven't used yet, we're kind of doing all of the in-between ones for our second row. Now that the strands are done, I'm going to turn it over, and I realize you can't quite see, but I'm pulling the loops off the bottom of the loom, and we're going to be cutting and tying some knots. So flipping it back to the front side, all of those warp strands on the end are loose, and they are needing to be cut and double knotted. So you cut them, tie each one of them in a double knot. That will secure the weaving and the tassels. Now that we're done with that, I'm just checking, making sure everything is snug. You could trim those warp strands off if you want, or if you like the look, you could leave them. Next, let's deal with our little tail ends. To deal with the tails, you're just tucking and weaving them back into the weaving. So this makes them a little bit more secure, and now they're not going to stick out and look unsightly. If you use longer pieces of string, you won't have very many tails to tuck. Let's flip it over and remove it from the loom. So carefully pulling off the loops and the tape. Your weaving should be free of the loom, and it's ready to tie and hang. So for the hanger, we're going to use a pencil because that's what I happen to have. You can loop those onto the pencil, and I happen to have 2 loose strands. Sometimes the loose strands end up at the bottom, sometimes they're at the top. I'm going to tie mine in a double knot here, and then just to make it feel a little more secure so it's not floppy, I'm going to loop those strands around the pencil so they feel more secure. Tuck the remaining ends in, and your weaving is finished.